So I'm joined today by Ronnie Renucci QC. Hi, Ronnie.
Hi, Edith.
How are you?
Surviving.
Good stuff. Good for you. So thank you so much for agreeing to take our Hey Legal quiz. And we'll just get started with our first question, which is, Ronnie, if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be?
I think that's actually quite an easy one. And I would probably be the world's worst antique dealer.
Antique dealer?
Yeah. And I would be the world's worst because I couldn't sell anything.
Right. I know that you, sorry, I was just going to say, I know you like antiques and those kind of things. We might get on to what other things you like later, but maybe it comes under antiques. So, and are you the kind of person that sees something and has to buy it, or are you good at resisting that?
I'm a collector. I could never sell. Like I become emotionally attached to objects, and so I could buy stuff easily enough, but I just couldn't sell it. No matter how much money people offered me, if I become attached to something, I tend to keep it for a very long time. And any time I've ever sold anything, I still regret it.
Really? You still think about things now that they've gone?
Yeah, so I wouldn't be very good at it.
What is do you have a favourite piece?
I like taxidermy. I collect taxidermy. I've moved from various things. I collected Archibald Knox, who designed stuff for Liberty for a while. I've various stuff, furniture, you name it.
Okay.
Never books, just various things over the years.
It was the taxidermy I was referencing earlier. And what, I don't know, what is the attraction with that? Or is it just because of the workmanship?
I don't know. I like birds and I like taxidermy, and I think they look quite good. So I've just collected them over the years.
Okay.
And a few years ago, my divils, I had 6 divils one year, and they clubbed together and got me a really nice piece of taxidermy, which is now in my office at faculty.
Right. And what was that? What kind of animal was it?
It was a bird. It was an Arctic skua.
Right. I'll not pretend I know what an Arctic skua looks like, but well received by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Very kind of them.
Okay. All right. Question number 2 is, did you have a nickname at school? And if so, what was it and why were you called it?
That's even easier. I had no nickname at school. I was either called Ronnie at school or Renucci. That was it.
Really?
I've never had a nickname.
Okay. Easily answered then. Yeah. Question 3, what was your first job?
Well, you won't remember it. A time when, it was a long time ago, because I'm obviously a lot older than you, Edith, but
yep.
You could actually work when you were 14 during the summer holidays. I think once you get a national insurance. And I worked in a factory when I was 14.
Did you?
In Hillington Industrial Estate, called Ferguson and Timpson Engineering Company. And I worked there every summer and every Easter until I left university.
Making what?
They made gaskets for engineering gaskets.
Right.
Just cut them out of a press. So sometimes work machines, and other times I would do other things in the factory, but that's what I did every summer from 14 through to about, I don't know, 20, 21. And
did you enjoy it?
No, it's terrible.
What was it?
It was terrible. I tell you, it really made sure that I studied, or at least studied for my exams and passed my exams.
No, it wasn't any banter or a bit of fun when you were there. Was it just?
Well, funnily enough, there was. I mean, there was quite a lot of fun. But it was really boring. And funnily enough, about my second year of my traineeship, you won't remember this either, but in Berlin, when you visited, accused, you used to go upstairs and you would walk past a sort of corridor. And as I was walking past the room one day, there was this face staring out at a glass, and it was one of the guys I'd worked with in the factory.
Behind bars, or I take it rather than...
Yeah, no, he's a prisoner. He was a prisoner.
Did you wave?
I don't know, honestly, I don't know who was more surprised.
Oh dear. Oh, okay. Question number 4. What do you remember of your first ever court experience? Or appearance, sorry. Court appearance.
Well, again, I'm giving my age away because many, many years ago when the legal aid was dealt with by the courts, you put in your application to the legal aid board, to the court, and they used to have things called legal aid hearings. So if the court wasn't quite sure whether or not it'd be granted, it would have a hearing. And you could do it when you were a trainee. You could appear, you weren't gowned or anything, you just went along. And in Glasgow District Court, I think I'd only been a trainee about a month and I get sent along to one of these things. And I think it was Mr. Nisbet. It might even have been Mr. Morrow, but I can't remember it. I just remember when I went to stand up to speak and nothing came out. I just stood up and no words would come out. So that was my very first one. But the first trial I remember doing was at Glasgow District Court. It was a breach of the peace in the JP court, court number 7. And my co-accused was Gary Allen. So Gary was a lot more experienced than me. And Gary was for the co-accused. It was a 2 accused breach of the peace. And I remember that was a breach of the peace in a chip shop. And it so happens one of the witnesses was an Italian and he knew my grandfather. He told me afterwards he met me outside.
Is that right?
Yeah, Gary Allen was my first ever experience in a trial.
And did he help you along? Or
he did.
Yeah.
No, he was very generous, and it was clear I did not have a clue what I was doing. He was very helpful. He swept up. It was worse because I was the first accused.
Oh, I think we've all been there, but yeah, always good to have somebody like that behind you or beside you. All right. Question number 5 is, who is or was your most inspiring colleague?
It's difficult, I suppose, to know what's meant by inspiring, but if I think back to the time when I first came to the bar, and I thought about this, and having seen the way that he, I would say, impressed the way he dealt with agents, the way he dealt with witnesses, the way he dealt with really anyone, juries, and the fact that I've junior to him on many occasions since, and in all that time never ever saw him use a note. I think it would have to be Ian Dugu.
Okay.
And the other one, I think that because I think he was fantastic with juries, I just loved watching him, and juries loved him, and you learn from that. You learn the importance of a jury can like you. Was Edgar Praise. Edgar was fantastic with juries. Yeah. You could just tell they loved him. So yeah. Ian and Edgar, I'd say, were the 2.
Fantastic. Edgar pops up a lot in this quiz with people for various reasons, but in a fond way. But I do remember, I think I just called and I didn't see the speech myself, but I heard about it because he'd kind of taken on one of the female jurors who I think had pulled a face when he said something. He just kind of pointed at her and started challenging her on, why she might be holding a certain view. So but he still liked him. He could get away with things like that.
He could. He was utterly fearless like that. Things that you would never think of saying or doing, he did it. Yeah. And you could just sometimes see. I remember I won a particular trial where it was Lord Hughes and Edgar, and you could tell that Lord Hughes was getting annoyed because Edgar could keep saying to witnesses after, "Thank you very much," and Lord Hughes said, "Stop it. It's not your job to thank witnesses." And so he thanked the next one, and then immediately corrected himself and says, "Oh, no, I take that back. I'm not allowed to thank you." And the jury just burst into laughter. So, yeah.
Yeah, a great man, great lawyer. All right, question number 6. How do you define success, Ronnie?
Every day that passes without an Anderson appeal. I think in our line of work, if you can get away with that, I think that is a success, if you can avoid it. I suppose it also would depend if it's personal success or career. I honestly don't know. I suspect, like many of it, I think a lot of us, we all suffer from imposter syndrome. So I suppose success is not being found out, getting away with it and not being found out.
That is a common answer as well, but I wonder, maybe it's a Scottish thing. Wonder if this quiz took place in America or somewhere like that, it would be, I imagine it would be entirely different answers coming out, but yeah.
It might be, but I also think it's something to do with our profession and being at the bar. I think, and I've read a few books by the guy Keith Evans, and some things come out, and it seems to be that a lot of people who are at the bar, it's a front, and we're all basically insecure and shy, and I would go along with that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
I imagine there probably is an element of that as well. Okay. Question number 7. Favourite holiday destination?
Well, it's difficult because I've got a few. It would be a toss-up between Cap Ferrat in the south of France, Cape Cod, or in Sicily. Those are my 3. But if I had to choose just one, probably Cape Cod.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
just for its variety.
Yeah. Have you been there a few times, or?
Yeah, I've been to all of them a few times, which is why I would say to them, yeah. When the kids were younger, we go to Cape Cod quite a lot because we do Boston and then we do Cape Cod, and then just for a relaxing holiday in the beach, we go to Cap Ferrat. And recently, a few years ago, discovered Sicily, and it was great. There are bits, in Taormina, and it is like walking through a Dolce & Gabbana
really?
advert. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's hope you get to one of those destinations sometime.
Yeah, maybe one day. Definitely not this year, though. Obviously.
No. All right. Question 8 is: which was your most memorable case?
I mean, that's difficult for me because I can't remember. Once I've finished a trial, it's like studying for exams. Once I've passed the exam, you just wipe your memory of everything, and it's like trials. I am not very good. I would say the most memorable one, but not for any spectacular reason, was many years ago when I was still junior counsel. I get instructed to do a trial for Kenny Ritchie. You know, the guy who'd been in death row in Ohio for 18 years.
Right.
He was originally from Edinburgh, and after he got pardoned, he got sent back, or he came back to Edinburgh, and he lived in Edinburgh, and he got charged with an assault and robbery. And I ended up doing the trial for him in Paisley High Court with Lord McEwen and Derek Ogg prosecuting. And it was memorable just for a whole lot of different ways, but mainly because of Ritchie himself, who was probably the most difficult client I've ever had.
Was he?
Yeah. And I still remember his police interview, where it was the most bullying, hectoring, aggressive, intimidating interview I've ever seen. And that was Ritchie to the police. He was. Yeah. I mean, obviously, you get pardoned, and it was only after, it's maybe only since then that I've begun to think, we all know that there are wrongful convictions, but you begin to wonder, such a thing as a wrongful pardon. But, yeah.
Or maybe it was maybe it was his experience that created the monster.
Yeah, I suspect it'd be a variety of things. I wouldn't imagine it'd be very pleasant being on death row for 18 years, but he was a very difficult guy. And I think since then, he's moved back to America. And I remember a few years ago reading that he got back into trouble when he was facing trial in America again. Really? His father, I think his father was American. His father was American. So I think he was an American citizen. That was the thing.
Right. And did he share with you what his experience in death row to an extent, or did you not really get into any chitter chatter with him?
There wasn't an awful lot of small talk with Mr. Ritchie. We never discussed that.
Oh dear. All right. Okay. Question number 9. Who has had the biggest influence on your career in law?
Well, again, it's probably two then, I'd have to say. The first is actually someone who I think you've already had on your show, as it were. But there's two, but for very different reasons. The first one's John Morris, and that's because when I started as a trainee back in 1985, I started with a firm called Doonan Morris O'Neill, and John was the Morris of that firm, but he had just left. He had just gone to the bar. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they instructed him, and then when I became a solicitor in my own right, and my firm then, we always instructed John. And again, with someone I loved watching in court. And many, many years later, when I was thinking about going to the bar, because when I came to the bar, I was probably about the same age as John had been when he went, maybe a bit older. I remember I travelled out to Airdrie, where he was sitting as a sheriff, to ask him if I thought, did he think I should go to the bar? Mm. And he said, yeah, absolutely, you'll love it, you should definitely do it. So I would say John Morrison's the first. The second one is perhaps, for some people, more controversial, I think, and I would probably have to explain the context, but the second was actually John Sturrock QC, who was the director of training when I came to the bar. I don't know, do you remember John Sturrock at all?
I think, yes, he was certainly there when I was divilling. I think that perhaps was his last year. So yeah, I do remember. Yeah, he was a colourful character.
Yeah, I think he was the first director of training. And I would say influential, not because I practiced everything that he taught us, but because he genuinely made me think about the way I did things and why I did them. And I would say my period divilling certainly improved me as a lawyer, not only the way I conducted myself in court, but the way I viewed things and the way I considered things that I would never have considered before. Mm-hmm. So I absolutely found my period divilling and the period in training. I think I was ready for it. I think I was ready for a change, and so I embraced it, and I definitely got a lot out of it, I'd have to say.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
You put a lot of I think Mr. Sturrock kind of established the kind of new way of working in the divilling as well, didn't he?
He did. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'm fairly sure he was the first director of training. Yeah. But then again, I suspected that I was somewhat older than you when I came to the bar, and I just thought I'm going to start with a clean slate. A blank sheet of paper, because if you've been a lawyer if you've been a solicitor for a long time, you can get into bad habits. It's a bit like, if you've been driving a car for a long time, you think we would now pass our driving test. So I just thought I would just
knuckle down.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. So that's that.
Good. No, and I must say it's a great thing to do. Anyone watching this that is thinking about coming to the bar, really well organised divilling course, and lots of really helpful things for people that are thinking about a career at the bar. All right, moving along. Question number 10 is your funniest or most memorable court moment.
Crikey, well, I mean, that's going back to what I said earlier. I can never remember one. It's a bit like some people play football and they can remember every single game they've played and every goal they've scored. And once I come off a football, or once I used to come off a football field, I could never remember very much about it. Probably the very first trial that I did, I'd called on the Friday, and I think I was lucky enough to have a trial about 2 weeks later. And it was before Lady Armson in Court 3. Derek Batchelor, who was then the assistant home AD, was prosecuting, and I was cross-examining the complainer, and he said to me from the witness box, if I asked him a question, if I asked a question again, he would leave the court. And so I asked him again, and he said, if you ask me that again, I'm leaving. And I asked him again, and he ran out of the witness box at Court 3, straight out the door. The macer chased him. I later found out the macer chased him down the Royal Mile to get him back. He refused to come back. He didn't come back the next day, and it was in the papers about this guy running down the street. And I honestly thought my career was over.
Oh.
Yeah, I read it and thought, my very first trial, and I thought my career was over. So that was one of the memorable, or looking back, it was funny. It didn't feel funny at the time. I can honestly say.
What was the offending question?
It was he claimed he'd been kidnapped by the accused and brought up to Edinburgh, but they'd got on a train together and they'd met on a gay chat line, and I was asking him about how he'd met him, and he didn't want to answer, and so that
ran for the hills.
Yeah, and I suppose any other memorable ones, any other time I've junior to Jackson, that's always a memorable experience. And I remember once it was a trial and Jackson had said he might not be there in the morning. It was a really, really important witness. It was a young girl who'd eyewitness.
It always is.
It was a confession. And she was giving evidence by CCTV. And I remember Alistair Campbell was a judge, and Jackson says, I might be late. If you're just going to have to deal with it, you're just going to have to do it. And just as the witness was called and had taken the oath, just before that's right, Jackson walked in, sat next to me, and I thought, that's brilliant. Great, I can relax.
Yeah.
After she'd given evidence, Alistair Campbell turned and said, Mr. Jackson. And Jackson stood up and says, my junior's going to take this witness.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
I don't know. He must have a sixth sense, because he does that, doesn't he? I might not be there, and then you're just waiting, and then at the 11th hour, in he comes. But we're not always.
In fairness, anytime a junior to me was always there for the important bits.
Mm. Oh dear. So anyway, you obviously handled it admirably and lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, I did love to tell the tale.
Question 11, Ronnie, is we all make mistakes. What have you learned from a professional error?
Oh, well, I suppose there must have been quite a lot of lessons, because I've made a lot of professional errors, I would think. But I suppose no point in dwelling on it, and make sure you don't try and do it again. And if possible, try and avoid putting yourself in the position where you're ever going to make that same mistake again. And I suppose if the error, if as a result of it, or if it resulted in someone doing something that was underhand, then I would never trust that person again, because I've made those mistakes as well. We all have. We've maybe trusted someone and it turned out not to be the right thing to do. And so, yeah, if it was that, I would never trust that person again. And when I say never, I mean never. So whatever mistakes you make, there's always something that you can learn from them. I think that's the answer to that.
Yeah, definitely. Good answer, like that. Question number 12. What do you do to stay well?
Drink lots of wine.
You said drink lots of water. Okay.
I used to play. I played football right up until my early 50s, up until 51, I think, and then that obviously didn't keep me well, because I needed a new hip, so I had to do something else. So I took up cycling. So I now cycle. I do a few of these big sportives a year, 2 or 3 a year. There's a few others do it. David Taylor does it. And yeah, I do that. And living in the country, it's great for cycling. I never cycled. I could never cycle in town, or I don't cycle in order to get from A to B. It's normally just a sort of leisure thing, and going out and cycling around the country and then coming back.
Do you get all the Lycra gear on?
Yeah.
I can just see you, Ronnie.
Yeah. No, you can. Yeah.
And tell me you don't travel in like packs of 5 and all these things that terrorising roads.
No, we only. I usually cycle my own up here, but if I go out, we go out in twos. But you should maybe read the highway code, what cyclists are actually allowed and not allowed to do.
Yeah, I know. To be fair, I I live in the country as well, and I have lived here for about 10 years, and have thought for those 10 years I'll get a bike, and I only just bought one this year. And yeah, do you know, it's good to put yourself in the position of people that you find irritating on the road, i.e. cyclists. It does give you a good perspective of things, doesn't it?
Yeah, I used to think, I mean, when I was on a motorbike, I used to think that all car drivers should be made to sit a motorbike test and get on a motorbike just to appreciate just the way they drive. And I think the same applies for cyclists as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Yeah. Okay. Question 13. What advice would you give on dealing with challenging clients?
You know, so I mean, that's quite a difficult one, and I'm not trying to be flippant when I say this. It's a difficult one because in truth, they're not our clients; they're the instructing agent's clients, and that's part of what makes it difficult. Because if it was just me, I'd be maybe harsher even than I am. But try not do anything that would impact on the solicitor's relationship with the accused, if possible. But ultimately, I think my advice would be never let the tail wag the dog. Don't let the accused call the shots. If that happens, then you're going to have problems. So I would always be firm. I would be straight, and I suppose my advice would be don't be tempted to do anything to stay in the case. It's just not worth it. In my experience, if an accused doesn't like what you're saying, then obviously he can sack you. But don't lose your integrity just to stay in a case and never do anything you're uncomfortable with. Okay. And I usually find if you're quite firm with them, they usually respect you for it and things work out okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes. The other times you just get sacked.
Excuse me. As I've been doing the quiz, I've done a couple so far, and actually I've been asking everyone else this extra question, which is, have you ever felt physically threatened by a client or somebody else's client that you're representing?
Yeah, there have been a couple of times. I'm always surprised that none of us are assaulted more than we actually are. I once got threatened from the witness box, which I didn't feel threatened. I once actually get threatened because he lost his temper, and it was quite good because it was a self-defence, and all of a sudden you've got this guy threatening to take me out from the witness box. But yeah, there's been a couple of times I've been uncomfortable in this. Once or twice down in the cells, you just begin to get a bit uncomfortable, and yeah, I'm never quite know. Then sometimes I always think, take the advice of Humphrey Bogart, which was, just appear to be hard or to be aggressive, but whatever, when push comes to shove, run. That's what to do.
Oh dear. Okay, question number 14 is, would you recommend law as a career?
No. I wouldn't now. No, not now, and at least certainly not with the particular area of law in which we operate. And I think the truth is it's too stressful, and I certainly wouldn't want that. For example, for my children, I certainly wouldn't want that. So, I would recommend law for a degree. I think it's a fantastic degree to have. I think it's a very useful degree to have, especially if someone doesn't know what they want to do. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure that I would honestly now recommend it as a career for a lot of reasons. 2 of my 3 children have got law degrees, but thankfully neither of them ever practiced. And I was quite relieved that they chose not to. My daughter nearly did, but she changed her mind.
Mm-hmm. What's she doing now, Ronnie?
All 3 of my children are now all living in London, and Louisa works. She runs a bar in London for a small company that have got about 6 bars throughout London, and she's I don't know what they call them, a manager of some sort. she's got her own bar that she looks after in Brixton, and she enjoys that. And Alessandro, my son, got his law degree, but he's got his own building company.
Right.
Yeah. So he went away to Madrid, got a master's in business, and has utilised his skills in that and started up a building. I say building, it's stuff. They do high-end fit-outs in London and, yeah, that type of stuff. In truth, I don't actually know what they actually do.
Sounds good though. But yeah, as you say, a law degree is a good basis for anything, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a great general. If you don't know what you want to do, it opens up a lot of doors. There's no doubt about it. It enables you to do certain things. But I don't know, maybe it's just because, I don't know, maybe I've been in law for too long, so I've got a slightly jaundiced view on it. And I do think it's harder now than it was ever been before.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And the stress as well, I don't know, it seems each case, certainly I find that each case you do, it becomes more and more stressful. And of course, there are so many kind of barriers as well in terms of evidential requirements. And just, I think, the type of accused people that are appearing, it's perhaps that has changed over the years as well. You're getting a lot of much younger people in terms of the sexual offences, so there's a bigger stress level there, I find.
Yeah, and also with technology and emails, people expect answers right away. They expect you to respond right away, and you just get bombarded with information. And, in the old days, people wrote to you, and you could always say, the letters in the post if you're responding back.
Yeah.
But now with emails, social media, people want an answer immediately. And, there's nothing more depressing than coming home at night and open up if you've been in court all day and get onto your computer, open up your emails, and there's just a huge deluge of emails. I mean, I used to be terrible. Following up, before March, I had about 30,000 unread emails. I just refused. I took the view, if someone wanted to contact me, they could phone me. But since March, and with all involvement and my involvement with the government and just the whole getting the courts back up and running and the non-jury trials and everything, I've now totally changed. And now I am on emails all the time, and I try and answer every single email as quickly as I can. So it's been a total sea change for me that way, but not necessarily for the better.
No, quite, absolutely. And it's usually your first filter is which one do I need to answer first, but you know that at some point you're going to have to answer them all. So yeah, no, I agree. That's nothing worse than coming home to that. Okay, question number 15. What aspects of your job bring you the most satisfaction?
I would say, I don't want to be trite, but I would say the collegiate aspect of it and colleagues. I think that, and I suppose, and at the moment my new office, but no, I think the collegiate aspect is really underestimated, especially amongst the criminal bar and colleagues. So I'd say that's the answer.
We spoke recently about that, and obviously you had a huge role to play in terms of at lockdown and trying to negotiate things in terms of jury trials, and you've since then gone on to become vice dean. I'm sure people will realise that, but just in case there's somebody that doesn't. So I know that you were grateful to have the kind of support of the bar behind you, certainly during discussions with the Scottish Government.
I mean, again, I can honestly say I was quite humbled by and very proud of the stance that the Criminal Bar Association took in relation to that, because we went 5 months without trials. Yeah. It would have been a lot easier for some people to have said, "Oh, look, let's just get back to work. Let's take non-jury trials or whatever it was." But there wasn't, in all that time and all that negotiations, not once did anyone come and say, look, we want to get back to work. You're going to have to do something. We need to get back now. Everyone was incredibly supportive, and it made my job so much easier, especially with negotiating. Because a number of times I was able to say at meetings, with whether it be government or any other organisation, say, well, look, we could go back, or it would be easy for us to say, let's go back. That way, people have got not a great impression all the time of lawyers and that we're money grabbers and everything else.
Yeah.
And financially, it would have been much more advantageous for us to have gone back or to have said, right, let's just do it. Not one single person said, right, let's do it. And everyone was incredibly supportive. And for that, I was very grateful. And it really did make my job so much easier. So, and if you like it meant that I held my colleagues in even higher regard than I did before.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Question number 16. What skills should every lawyer have or learn?
I think there are a number of things, although perhaps are not necessarily skills, but more attributes. I think the first is the most important, and it's something that I try and say to the Devils every year whenever I have to go and talk to them. And this year, as vice dean, one of my roles was I had to go and speak to them about ethics. But I would say integrity. Without integrity, I don't think we don't have anything. And to emphasise that, I used to use a quote from Mayor Lansky, who was involved with organised crime in the 1950s. He was a mobster, and he was the Hyman Roth character in Godfather 2, that it was based on him. And I used to give this quote that I'd read from Mayor Lansky, and it was that if you lose your money, you lose nothing. If you lose your health, you lose something. But if you lose your integrity and your character, you lose everything. And I thought that summed everything up. And then, of course, later on in life, I found out that, like a true gangster, he'd actually stolen that quote from Woodrow Wilson and paraphrased it for himself. But it's still, notwithstanding that fact, I think that still stands true. So I would say integrity. Okay. And then after that, I think to have at least a degree of insight is incredibly helpful as well. And also, don't take results personally, or at least try not to. It's difficult, but not. And perhaps lastly, but and this is mostly, and this is just a personal one for me, and it's aimed mostly at our male colleagues, never, ever button all the buttons on your jacket. There is nothing more annoying.
Remind me of the sequence that you should button. Is it the top two?
Sometimes, always, never.
Sometimes, always, never. All right. Yeah. I know that irks you greatly. So top tip there, Ronnie.
Yeah. And the never is, you never ever button the bottom button in your jacket. So if you've got a single button jacket, you'll button the top one. That's sometimes. Or sorry, if you've got 3 buttons, you can button the middle one. That's sometimes the middle one. If you've got a 1 or a 2 button, you can button the top one. But you never ever button all buttons in your jacket. You can edit this bit out.
No. This is the kind of things that perhaps should be taught on the Deviling course. I'm sure you maybe, did you suggest that, Ronnie?
Can I tell you, I've tried
it. Somebody will be grateful for that advice, I'm sure, and they should be. All right, question number 17, favourite chocolate bar?
God, yeah, pretty boring, but a bar of walnut.
Okay.
Yeah, just Barcelona. Yeah.
Are you an avid chocolate eater or just occasional?
No, I eat quite a lot of chocolate. Yeah, yeah. I've got terrible eating habits. I don't eat anything during the day at all usually, and then come 6 o'clock at night, I don't stop eating until I go to bed.
That sounds all right.
Yeah.
All right. Question 18. What job would you be terrible at?
Any job at all that required a degree of creativity. I am not creative at all.
Are you not?
No. I'll leave that to my wife Lindsay, who's probably the most creative person that I know. She can do absolutely everything and do it very, very well, and she can create things from nothing. But I can't do anything at all. So I have got no creative gene whatsoever. Oh, I suppose some people might say the one I'm doing just now. and certainly a lot of clients that are languishing away in prison would probably say it's the worst job. But
not at all. Not at all. That's your insecurities coming back out.
Absolutely. They always come to the fore.
All right, I'm hesitating with this next one because I don't know what you might produce. Favourite animal?
Well, as I said, I do like birds, but I realise they're not an animal. So I would have to say, I'd have to say one of my dogs, I suppose.
And have you got one to hand? I've put in a qualification. You've got to get it on screen.
There's Luca.
You've got an Italian Greyhound, is that right, Ronnie?
No, he's a blue whippet.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he's not for moving.
No, is he not going to? Yeah, go get him. Oh, he's lovely.
Yeah.
What age is he, Ronnie?
What's that?
What age is he?
Oh, he's about 4. We've always had whippets, and then when the last one died, I said to Lindsay, I said, that's it, no more dogs. If you get another dog, you get a choice. It's either another dog or me, and we've now got 3 dogs. So we've got a whippet and 2 Boston Terriers.
Oh, he's lovely. 2 Boston Terriers.
Yeah, he's got good nature. He's a good dog.
Oh, he's very sweet. All right, and we have now reached the final question, which is, what question should we have included?
Who do you think is the second best president in the SCBA history?
And your answer?
No, that's a flipping. I would say, what question should have asked? What are your best and worst attributes?
Okay. Do you want to answer those?
Yeah, best would be a crippling ability to see both sides of the argument.
And worst?
And my worst would be a crippling ability to see both sides of the argument. Your strength is often your weakness.
Yeah. That's a good question though. We might consider, what I should really be doing is just gathering all these answers up and then creating another quiz out of what comes out.
Yeah.
But Ronnie, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for taking part. And yeah, I know lots of people will tune into this to have a watch and see what your answers are. But that was really brilliant. Thank you so much for your time.
No, listen. Thank you very much, and listen, well done in doing all this.
Well, just obviously just started in lockdown, but it seems to prove pretty popular, and I think it's also good to just ask things ask things that you would never normally speak to your colleagues about. In fact, one was Angela Graham said she'd never asked, there were slightly different questions to yours, but similar. But she'd said she'd never asked herself these questions, never mind had anyone else ask her. So definitely is a good insight into people that we meet a lot, but never kind of discuss these things. So thank you so much again, Ronnie. That was really great.
No, thank
really
you.
grateful. All right. See you soon. Thank you so much. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.